unsettling. So you know the basketball superstar Caitlin Clark.
What happens when the player driving your entire business becomes the one taking the hardest hits? That is the question the league cannot dodge right now. Caitlin Clark did not sneak into the WNBA. She kicked the doors open and brought a wave of new money, new eyes, and new expectations. Merch flies, apps spike, arenas fill. Yet the clips keep circulating that make casual viewers wince. You see the shove, the blind side, the late hit that gets brushed off as just physical basketball. Then you look at the numbers, a lawyer laid out, and realize this is not random. It looks like a pattern. And when a pattern lives in a workplace, it stops being a vibe and starts becoming a legal exposure. This video is not about blaming a team.
Smith on it. Go.
You got people that are resentful towards her. But it's really not about her, guys. It's about what she represents. Before she ever came along, there were a lot of outstanding basketball players who happened to be black females.
A city, or a single referee. It is about asking one hard question. Is the league protecting its top attraction, or gambling that the attention will outlast the bruises? Because if a lawyer is already calling the current climate a hostile work environment, the countdown is on. You can fix this in-house by enforcing your own rules, or you can let someone else fix it for you. One path keeps the season clean. The other turns back.
That was doing their thing on the WNBA level. And they never got this kind of shine. This girl, the Golden Goose, comes along.
But I could be wrong. Joining us now from England is Sean McLean. He's the founder of Origin Advocacy. He wrote a piece in a Wall Street Journal about all this that caught my attention.
Basketball into hearings and subpoenas. Let's walk through how we got here and what has to change before the next headline writes itself. It starts with a moment that made everyone stop scrolling and hit replay. One clip can set a season on fire. The first time viewers saw Clark absorb that blindsiding hip check, the mood flipped from excitement to disbelief. Slow motion replays do not soften the impact. They magnify it. You can read the body language in the aftermath. The crowd leaning forward, the bench going still, the ref glancing around and hesitating. Even after the league reclassified the contact, the internet had already decided the storyline. People were not only debating a foul, they were debating a standard. Why did this one resonate? Because it did not feel like a one-off. It felt like a preview of what was coming next. As new fans poured in, they were promised high-skill offense and long-range fireworks. Instead, their feeds started filling with collisions that looked more like a message than a play. Veterans shrugged and said, "That is the league." Newcomers asked if this is what they paid to see. When those two audiences collide, the clip does not die. It keeps getting shared as Exhibit A for why something feels off. The truth is simple. A single spark only catches if the floor is already dry. In this case, the floor was bone dry, covered with months of expectation and a fast-growing national spotlight. That is why the clip refused to fade. It was not only a hit on a player, it was a hit on the promise the league had been selling since.
Caitlin Clark comes in and is immediately the biggest star in the league. Immediately. And merchandising in every other way. Apparently, there's some jealousy that might be manifesting itself into physical inappropriate conduct.
Bring far more physical play than anyone else in the league.
White superstar, is that what you're saying?
I think as you kind of hit on and in the clips leading into this segment, there's a lot of jealousy and animosity, and that can be understood, right? If you've been an MVP of the league in the past, yet you were unable to achieve the visibility and perhaps the endorsements that Caitlin Clark has received right out of the gate, it shows that it's normal to assume that there would be some degree of resentment. However, the concern is that resentment is then leading to targeting on the court. It's happening at a higher rate for Caitlin Clark than anyone else. And unfortunately, it's creating a textbook hostile work environment for Caitlin Clark. And under title...
It's opening night. The promise matters because the money behind it is not theoretical, it is measurable. Follow the receipts. Tickets surge, secondary markets inflate. Road games look like home games. And a lower bowl suddenly hums in cities that did not have that noise last season. Season ticket lines get longer. Team stores reorder the same jerseys twice in a week. Local businesses near arenas stretch their hours because game nights now mean real foot traffic. That's what a star does when the timing is perfect and the curiosity factor is sky high. The business stack is bigger than tickets. Streaming packages rise, league apps spike in sessions per user, and mainstream media slots shift to feature highlights they used to ignore. Sponsors notice. They don't just see raw numbers. They see new demographics entering the funnel. Parents buying merch for kids, and people who have never watched a full game staying for the fourth quarter. That kind of stickiness is gold. The front office knows it. The broadcast partners know it. The players know it. All of this matters for one hard reason. Money rewrites priorities. When a single athlete acts like an accelerant on growth, you do not treat her minutes or her safety like an experiment. The audience has a simple expectation. If she's the main draw, the environment around her must look credible and controlled. Do that, and casuals turn into fans. Fail, and the growth curve flattens overnight. The financial argument is loud, but the contact data is louder. 17% is not a blip. It is a warning siren. When a lawyer says one player absorbed nearly 1/5 of all hard or flagrant contact, you do not need a law degree to see the red flags. The number is jarring because it violates instinct. Top draws usually see the cleanest version of a sport. Here, the claim is the opposite. The face of the surge is wearing the bruises of the surge. Consider what that percentage implies. It is calculated on calls that actually made the score sheet. Anyone who has watched high-level basketball knows there is a second layer of contact that never makes it to the book. Off-ball bumps that throw off timing. Hips that erase angles. Late body checks after a pass. Stack those up over a month and you change a player's rhythm and a team's offense. You also change the injury calculus. Ankles roll more when bodies are crowded. Neck whiplash builds over a long season. The tape does not only tell you what was called, it tells you what almost became something worse. A pattern is not just repetition. It is repetition that continues after leadership has a chance to intervene. That is the line lawyers look for. If the numbers say the hits cluster on one star and the league remains reactive instead of proactive, the argument shifts from tough play to tolerated targeting. That shift is where phrases like hostile environment start entering the chat, which raises the old locker room question that never goes away. Where is the line? Basketball has a long memory. Rookies get tested, shooters get crowded, trash talk sharpens. In that sense, none of this is new. The tension comes from scale and intent. Physicality by design is part of a game plan. Predatory contact by habit is a culture problem. The first is chess, the second is rot. Watch possession after possession and you can feel the difference. One is a bump to deny a cut. The other arrives late, off the ball, or in a way that dares the officials to keep swallowing the whistle. Players will tell you the same thing in different words. Everyone can absorb a hit. No one can absorb context ignored by the people in charge. If the league makes clear where the boundary sits and enforces it with real consequences, tempers cool and...
Okay, so you're basically a consultant to various individuals. Is there an ideology attached to you?
So I worked in government for nearly 15 years. So I'm very limited government. I'm conservative. I've worked for Marshall Blackburn, Ted Cruz, over 600%, league app engagement over 600%, subscriptions to League Pass over 400%, and the team she plays for, the Indiana Fever, tripled in value. But despite all that success that she's immediately had, the league has basically looked the other way as she's been targeted on a weekly basis.
Tell me what targeting means. What does that mean?
So she is taking on harder fouls and at a higher rate than any of her peers. So it turns out that in her rookie season, she absorbed 17% of all flagrant fouls or hard fouls, more than...
Strategies adjust. If the boundary is fuzzy, the gray zone grows teeth. Competitors explore it because they are wired to explore edges. That is why governance exists in sports. Not to kill the fight, but to keep the fight inside the lines. There is a second layer here. The audience reads body language better than most executives realize. When a star lands hard and teammates rush to help while officials, bored, the viewer makes a conclusion that is difficult to erase. The product looks careless. Not edgy, careless. That word is poisoned during a growth phase. And in this case, there is a separate tension that turns up the heat on every missed call. Race is a charged topic in any workplace. Sports do not get a waiver. When an MVP says the attention surrounding Clark is absolutely about race, the temperature in the room changes. It does not matter if you agree or disagree. It matters that the statement entered the bloodstream. Add visible endorsement deals and media spotlight to that context, and the resentment narrative writes itself. The human reaction is predictable. Employees who have carried the brand for years.
7 of the Civil Rights Act, the federal government does have an ability to engage here, should they so choose.
Small number of men and women that actually get to live out their dream of playing a professional sport. And we have grown-ass men and women out here doing whatever they can to try to make sure that does not happen. That is the weirdest thing in the world, but it is what it is, and I'm glad that Caitlin has a great head on her shoulders.
Watch a newcomer receive a level of coverage they never enjoyed. Some respond by competing harder. Others by questioning the machinery that decides who gets top billing. Neither response is inherently wrong. But once those emotions spill onto the court, as extra contact or pointed physical messages, leadership cannot pretend it's just basketball culture. The moment a protected characteristic could plausibly explain differential treatment, the legal framing becomes unavoidable. The safest path is also the simplest one. Establish a standard that is blind to identity and ruthless about enforcement. The goal is not to change how people feel. The goal is to make sure feelings never dictate safety. When the whistle proves the standard, resentment loses its leverage. Whistles are the language everyone understands, which is why silence from the floor is so damaging. Non-calls are not neutral. They are signals. In the first 5 minutes of a game, refs set the weather. Tight whistle means skill rises. Loose whistle means bodies challenge space. When former players say too much contact on Clark is sliding by, they're not complaining. They're decoding the weather pattern. Athletes adapt to whatever the officials permit. Imagine a sophomore phenom in the NBA, drawing record ratings and taking a disproportionate share of the league's hardest hits. The response would be swift. Points of emphasis would arrive in the nightly officiating memo. Coaches would get a quiet call. The 2-minute report would grow teeth. By the weekend, national broadcasts would feature a cleaner version of the same matchup. Not because stars deserve a cushion, because the product...
Now, what caught your attention about Caitlin Clark?
Caitlin Clark has had a seismic impact on the WNBA ever since she first joined. Merchandise sales increased double the rate of any of her peers. This is not something that you would see occur to any other top star in any other league. And I think a lot of fans are scratching their heads of why the league is allowing this to continue, especially given the economic impact that she's having on the league, which they've so desired for decades.
Demands clarity. The NBA learned these lessons through trial and error. Once upon a time, hand-checking defined perimeter defense until it strangled offensive watchability. Rule tweaks followed. Flagrant thresholds evolved. Replay was expanded to ensure rough play did not slip through. You could debate each change on its own merits, but the pattern is unmistakable. The people spending real money are already doing the math. Sponsors are allergic to uncertainty. They evaluate placements through 3 lenses: audience reach, brand fit, and risk. The first 2 have never looked better for the league. The third looks shaky when viral clips feature a star getting decked. That is the kind of content that lands in executive chats with the subject line, "Are we sure about this?" The ripple effect is wider than patch logos. Broadcasters build promotional calendars around predictable beats. If the face of the surge is at constant risk, they cannot script the season. Insurance underwriters notice too. Injury risk at scale changes premiums, which changes budgets. None of this requires a scandal. It only requires doubt. Doubt is the slow leak that flattens momentum. Sponsors are not...
Pattern like that can legally qualify as a hostile work environment.
Yeah, but you're not scratching your head, Sean. What do you think it is?
Right after she was drafted and heading into her rookie year, Asia Wilson, who is a 3-time MVP of the league, she's won the championship.
Not asking for a special whistle. They want a stable environment that keeps storylines fun and clean, which is why the scariest phrase in this entire debate is not about ratings. It is Title VII. Think of Title VII as the umbrella over every American workplace. It forbids discrimination based on protected traits and holds employers responsible for stopping hostile conditions that are severe or pervasive. Translate that into sports language. A professional court is a workplace. The league and its teams are the employer side. If someone can make a credible case that a player is being targeted in ways tied to a
For the Las Vegas Aces, she came out and addressed the attention that Caitlin Clark is getting, and she said it's absolutely has to do with race. And then, quote, it boils her blood when people try and say that it's not about race. And so, unfortunately, it seems like there's a lot of commentary that's being made by players when they're on camera and they know reporters are watching.
Protected characteristic, and management is not taking reasonable steps to stop it. Legal exposure is real. No one's saying a refereeing mistake equals a federal case. That's not the threshold. The threshold is pattern plus tolerance. Repeated incidents, documented concerns, visible silence, or ineffective responses. The kind of record where an investigator can say leadership knew or should have known and did not act adequately. Players know this, which is why the next negotiation will not skip the safety chapter. A rising tide does not just lift boats, it reshapes docks. The union enters every cycle with two responsibilities: protect members and capture fair value from growth. Safety is the bridge between those goals.
Clients figure out how to best engage the federal government.
Okay.
And in the Trump administration, including the Trump White House.
Okay. Number one, what's Origin Advocacy? What is that?
Origin Advocacy is a Washington, D.C. based consulting and lobbying firm. We help.
When a single athlete becomes the league's marketing engine and simultaneously eats a disproportionate share of rough contact, it hands the union a narrative and a metric. We want standards that match the modern moment. Expect the next talks to connect dots that used to live in separate folders. Travel and recovery link to availability. Availability links to ratings. Ratings link to sponsorship cycles. Sponsorship cycles link to salary structures and benefits. If officiating trends increase injury risk, it does not sit in a refereeing silo. It becomes a business topic. That's how leverage works when the story is visible to anyone with a phone. Meanwhile, the court of public opinion is already in session. The algorithm loves conflict. A clip of a deep three travels far. A clip of a star getting bulldozed travels farther. Viewers who barely know the standings can still recognize a cheap shot. That recognition turns into shares, comments, and stitched reactions. Suddenly, the conversation migrates from sports pages to mainstream feeds that thrive on outrage. Each cycle adds a new layer: race, money, safety, politics. A perfect recipe for eyeballs and headaches. Creators chase incentives. If views are in controversy, the content machine will package every hard hit as proof of a grand narrative. That does not mean the narrative is false. It means it'll be amplified regardless. The only antidote is credible transparency. When a league shows its metrics and its enforcement, the conspiracy oxygen thins out. When it stays opaque, the wildest theory wins the day because it's entertaining. Which brings us to the part no one should overcomplicate. The fix is on the table. Start with a memo, but do not stop there. State 3 points of emphasis. Protect airborne shooters. Clean up off-ball collisions that alter cuts and screens. Address late body checks after a pass. Then pair the memo with visible action. In the next marquee matchup, call the first 2 obvious hits immediately. Issue a warning to both benches. If the temperature stays high, escalate to fines. If repeat offenders show up, escalate to a 1-game sit. This is not special treatment. It's basic governance. Add 2 transparency moves for the rest of the season. First, a weekly discipline summary that lists flagrant calls, reviews, and outcomes. No drama, just facts. Second, a short video clinic published to fans and teams that shows legal physicality versus illegal contact with current season examples. People learn faster from clips than bulletins. Give coaches something to teach and players something to adjust to. So what happens if nothing changes? You can't build a renaissance on bruises. The athlete who brought millions of new eyes to the sport deserves what every professional deserves: a fair whistle, a clear standard, a workplace that does not normalize targeting. This is not about favoritism. It's about stewardship. Protect the product by protecting the people who power it. The league does not need a task force or a crisis PR drill to begin. It needs 3 words delivered to the floor and enforced without hesitation. Call the fouls. If the standard tightens, the story resets to what fans actually came to see: a young star carrying a franchise and pulling a league into a new era. If the standard stays mushy, do not be surprised when the next chapter is written somewhere far from the court. In that chapter, highlight reels do not matter. Paper trails do. The clock is already running. Which path gets chosen next will say everything about whether this surge was a moment or a movement.